Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. My guest today is an independent college counselor. She has been at it for quite some time in the public and private sector, and she is a wizard when it comes to dealing with different universities, different application systems. And I just had a great time talking to her. It's really a difficult time, especially with people trying to figure out what to do if you have a sophomore, junior, sometimes even seniors, and great information. It was a fantastic conversation. Without further ado, the woman, the myth, the legend, Michelle Myers. Remember, don't worry about what you say. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Matthew Todd?
I am doing well. Thank you for coming today. What a cray-cray situation. I just had a parent today text me with a slew of questions about, what's going to happen in the fall. It's like, I don't know, man.
I know. Isn't it nice when they think that you're that powerful that you would have all those answers?
It is nice. Hang on one second.
Yeah.
So when people are calling you and trying to find out what to plan for, how do you manage that?
Well, obviously it's changing every day, every week. But right now, it's really about where's that student out right now. So, for example, a lot of juniors are calling me right now, right? The parents of juniors. And where they are, what's their transcript look like? Because you can kind of see where their math is, if they could potentially do well in a test. And then, you can ask them, how are they on test taking? So I'm encouraging them to take the PSAT because, a lot of high schools switch to having it at the end of January. So go ahead and take it. Let's see what happens. You don't have to study for it. A lot of schools are doing it during the week, not just on a Saturday. Obviously, the private schools tend to do it during the week. So go ahead, get out of class. Go take the test. And then again, a lot of the private schools will do the plan, which is the pre-ACT, and they'll do that for sophomores. So I'm encouraging them to do these things. And the reason for that is because if it turns out where they're applying to a school that a strong test score could really have them stand out or tip the scale for them, they're going to take the test, see how they do, potentially study. Of course, I always recommend test prep. I think it's a great investment. And take the test and then decide later whether or not it's sent. I mean, just this year with my seniors, I had at least, a third of the students I was working with, we actually sent their test scores to some schools and not others.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, for sure. So I had a student that, I don't know, she was probably like a 3.85, 3.9 at best. Come on, that's a great GPA, right? But I'm talking about the UCs.
Right. Okay.
And she wants Santa Barbara and maybe Davis, and I think she threw Santa Cruz in there for fun. And she had a rigorous academic class schedule. She did a lot of good summer stuff, but nothing like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Sorry.
Nothing crazy standout.
No, but good, like solid, good. She had some good stories, better than I actually had thought when I first put together her academic resume with her. I'm like, oh, the Mexican go build a house sitch.
I love the Amigos program. Come on.
It's not the Amigos. It was a church thing, but we made it work. Anyway, it was, like I said, it was better than I thought.
Right.
But nevertheless, she had like a 28 on the ACT. She took it a couple times. I think she studied. And I just, my benchmark was 30 for the UCs and really a 32 because I did some research, talked to some admissions counselors in the UC system. And really, if it's not going to add value to your application, don't send it. So we did not send her test scores to any of the UCs. We did not send it to University of Wisconsin, and she got in, which that was kind of a win for her because I've had other students with higher GPAs and solid test scores not get in previous years. But she liked University of Oregon. She wants the football team, so we wanted to put that on there. But at 28 at University of Oregon, that could get her money. So we sent them.
That's a really good strategy because, and again, I don't pretend to even dabble in the admissions advice arena, but just knowing that there there are ways you can strategize and utilize the test score. Because again, this mom was asking me just on my way here. I think I was telling you right before we turned on the mic. This mom was saying, "Hey, look, what's the plan?" She's got a junior. She's got two, actually. They're twins. And she was saying, "Look, what's the plan for this year? Because I don't we like the prep. It's wonderful." Right? That's not the question. The question is, are we going to need it, and are we going to need these test scores? And my answer obviously was, look, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know for sure. What I can tell you is that the majority of states are back open, at least academically, right? And they're looking at closing schools as a last option from here on out. They're like, look, we're going to fight it every single way except to close down the schools. So if schools are open in, 40 out of the 50 states or, more, then you're going to assume that they have access to testing. If the majority have access to testing, then it's going to be a very clear thing to say, all right, well, then we're gonna at least look at the test scores. And she has some athletes, and I was saying, look, even if you're applying to a school that does not require the SAT, the NCAA still may have its own requirements. So you really have to look at not a, hey, is this going to be valuable blanket statement, and say, all right, what's the specific strategy we're going to use for the individual schools? And, students apply to 10 or 15 and potentially more. And the strategy may be different for all of those, but likely that you'll have one school that it plays into.
Right? Absolutely. And if the student doesn't do well, then we just don't send the test. But I think we should lean into this, because if you think you can just sit back and go, well, I don't have to. Well, if that's your attitude towards whatever else you need to do for your college applications, then you're probably looking at a school where your GPA is in the middle or even above the middle of who they admit, because you don't want to do the extra step. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth studying. I think it's worth taking. Don't take them both. You can just decide on one. And so, and it doesn't have to be crazy. You can take it once and decide oh my gosh, I'm never going to do better. And I'm not going to push a student. Normally, I would say, let's just take it one more time. But since basically everyone's test optional, at least for juniors, again, we've got test optional, and potentially have test blind too.
Right.
We'll see how it all unfolds. But my whole theory about test blind too, especially on a UC application, because a real person looks at the application versus the CSU, San Diego State, Cal Poly, a real person really doesn't look at the application, is that they didn't take it out. It's not like they took out that section of the application. The application was live August 1st, and they were making these decisions over Labor Day. So they were not going to modify the application. And I had all my students that, like I said, scored 32 or higher, 1400 or higher, include those scores on their application, because a person's going to see that. Even though they talk about the 14 factors for evaluating a UC application and went down to 13 factors, that person's going to go, wow, that student got a 1500. They're capable.
Right. They're not going to turn a blind eye, especially if they what I advise people to say is very similar to your situation. If there's a student that the admissions officer likes, but can't outright find the supporting evidence to admit the person, say it's a great essay and there's just something about the kid, but the kid has a 3.8. And they're like, dang it. On the face of it, you can't do it. But then if you have, like you're saying, a 1500, you have a student that for various reasons just wasn't able to get a higher GPA over the course of the 3-4 years, then they're going to be like, yeah, but what about that number over there? You can have it as a supporting factor. Plus, the legislation was always evolving, right? The court cases that drove the UCs to decide to ultimately go test blind theoretically or replace it in 4 years, those lawsuits and that arguing, that's not over, right?
Right. I mean, it definitely was evolving for seniors from Labor Day, but they really could not change their mind after the deadline of the application. I mean, that just would have been a disaster.
Right.
So, but I, again, was hedging my bet with the student that putting the test scores that were strong was going to tip the scale, hopefully, for them. But, I mean, beyond that, they're dropping the essay now, which apparently only 10% of colleges even use that.
Yeah, the essay was such a whipping boy, and people freaked out about it. They're like, we're on class number 4, and we haven't hit the essay. It's like, well, it doesn't even affect your 1600 score on the SAT. It's like a nothing. And then the next question was always, well, wait, why are we taking it? It's like, well, there are some schools that require it. Like,
Right.
I don't make those rules. That's just the way it goes. But yeah, like, get rid of the essay.
That's gone. Because I've had students not score well on the essay, and I know for a fact they're excellent writers because later I see all their college essays, and I'm like, how did you only score like a 12 or something on the essay when, you know, you're so much better than that? It's I never really understood the scoring of the essay anyways. But the other piece is with, I actually just saw an email from a parent. One was, you know, they're saying that the ACT is unorganized right now and students should take the SAT. And I'm like,
wait, based on what?
I know. I don't know. I didn't finish the whole email, but I glanced at it going, that just seems ridiculous because her particular student, he leans towards the humanities. He loves to write. He's an English major. So, you know, high reading comprehension, right? Which I think yields better scores on the ACT. I don't know if you agree with that, but
it depends on the student, actually. I mean, reading comprehension is different for everyone in reality. So sometimes I have people who are really great, like they love the Twilight series or something, right? Or the Hunger Games.
That's not really high level.
No. But what I'm saying is, no. But hang on. What I'm saying is they like novel type stuff. Okay, so they can take the SAT long critical reading section and they do fine with it. But if you put those same people on, say, a science based thing, they're not as strong. So sometimes that bites you where somebody is strong reading for non-science and fiction based stuff, and then they get tripped up on. I mean, again, it kind of depends.
I don't let my students write their favorite book to be any Hunger Games or Twilight or even Harry Potter. I'm like, no, let's come up with a better book.
How dare you? I love the Harry Potter series.
Look, I'm not saying, my kids loved it too. And my oldest
No.
read
I'm
them
not
all
saying
twice.
past tense. I'm saying I currently love them.
No, look, you know, every time Harry Potter is on like TBS or something, it's staying there. And I sit there and go, oh, I gotta watch this again. I personally didn't get into it. I'm sorry.
It was probably one of the most inspiring series of my young life when it was coming out. Because, I mean, we don't have to get into why I love Harry Potter. But I get what you're saying. There's some... The ACT and the SAT are train wrecks right now. They were more so 4 or 5 months ago. Now they're starting to get it together. There's more predictive ability with if a test is going to go off or not. But why would somebody say that the ACT? I'm just curious. You have no idea what her reasoning was?
Just that it was disorganizing and they were having a hard time with test dates and something like that. So.
Everyone's having a hard time with test dates.
I know.
Like, that doesn't say anything.
I know. There should be no reason why you wouldn't. The reason you take the test because that is a test you're going to do better on. That's why you take that one over the other one. Not because you're having issues trying to find a test date. You have to figure that out and make that work.
Are you seeing a large percent of people freaking out about finding the perfect test? Because in recent years, for some reason, we've always had both tests, right? But there was a long period of time where people said, like, okay, well, look, the SAT just changed. We're not going to mess around with that. And that happened in 2000.
That was like 1 or 2 application cycles.
Yeah, but it also happened in 2004, 2005 when they changed it the first time. So when it went from the 16 to the 24, there was this large swath of time where it became unpopular. And the problem with that is when they added the third section, they added this grammar section. Some schools, like the CSUs, didn't all look at the grammar section, and some just the CSUs didn't look at it. The UCs did. So you had this really weird additional section. So there was a swath of time where people kind of like, I don't really know what's going on with that. And the ACT became more popular. SAT changed, whole big brouhaha there. But people now seem to be settled into both and really concerned about which is the perfect test for them. Because you can give a diagnostic test, but beyond that, what do you say? Because sometimes people come with the data. They're like, well, look, we took these diagnostic tests. They're pretty similar. How do we go from here? Like, even having the analogous scores, like, you're pretty much perfect. Okay, but which one's the best, though? What do you do for that?
It's not very scientific. One is which test did you like better?
Right. That's usually what I default
Which one
to.
or not even like you liked, which one did you not detest the most? So, you know, they'll have an answer to that. And then I say, how do you deal with your time management on a test? because you got to move through the ACT.
Okay.
There's no hesitation.
Okay, if I may. This is one that I'm gonna die on. Okay,
You're
check
gonna hang
this
on
out.
this cross?
This is This is my hill. Okay, listen to me.
Okay.
The SAT gives you more time per problem. Yes, let's just look at just the math. Okay. Yes, you get more time per problem. That's a very easy calculation. There's no arguing. However, on the SAT, if you look at the test, you have on average about 2.4 problems per page. Okay, so that gives you a rough idea of how large the
I am
problems are.
not going to contest any of this. This is not my.
It drives me nuts. But on the ACT, you have 4 problems per page. So you have a lower frequency of lengthy word problems. You have lower frequency of crazy charts and graphs. So although the SAT does give you a little bit more time, the ACT has shorter, more straightforward problems. So when people say, oh, well, I need more time on tests, so I'm going to take the SAT, it's like, but the SAT requires more time.
Well, that's after they've taken a practice test to see what the format is. It's not just a blanket statement. I always encourage students to take both. So the best case scenario is usually they've taken the PSAT, maybe their sophomore year, back in the day when you could take it fall of sophomore year. And then they'll take a practiced ACT. Appleroth does it for $20 online. There's a couple of places around here that will give it to you, and you can just take it home, or they'll proctor you or whatever.
Yeah, but then they come to your house and harass you.
Well, that's for you.
Some of the high schools reached out. They're like, hey, do you want to administer an SAT? I'm like, it's not something I usually do. They're like, yeah, but then you get access to our students. I was like, oh, gross. Oh my God, that's disgusting. No, thank you. So I turned around. I was like, that's not my business. Thank you. But give that to someone else.
Right. And there are plenty of people that will do that.
That will jump on it.
Yeah. So they do that. And then I have them bring their,
sure,
to someone like you. Sure. And then I let an expert decide, talk it through with them and go, okay, which test is for me? I don't know. I don't drill down that deep on that situation. I really let them decide what direction. But my main thing is you don't have to overtest. Okay.
Yes.
You don't have to take both of them. Everyone takes them. Everyone loves them. You know what they love? They love the highest score. That's what they love. So figure out where you're going to get the highest score and do that one. But yeah, and at this point, what I'm struggling with is what to tell my sophomores, because I really don't know what it's going to look like. I am encouraging all my juniors to take either the SAT or the ACT and then see what happens with that. But I don't know about my sophomores.
Okay. Beautiful. Because I actually wanted to ask you about this. So is similar for people that call me or even this woman that was a little anxious saying, hey, look, what do you think? It's like, look, strong odds. It's going to be business as usual. I don't know if we're going to be locked in our houses tomorrow because there's a fire or something. I don't know for sure what's going to happen, but strong odds it's business as usual, okay? Mm-hmm. But for sophomores, what are you saying? Because there are some large systemic transitions happening, like, for instance, the UCs. And for the sophomore class, they won't even be looking theoretically at the SAT. This is what they've kind of said, at least not for the standard application. They're not going blind until it's 2024, right? Mm-hmm. So for the sophomore class, what else do you see? Because the UC is obviously hey, you don't have to worry about testing. But the UCs, those aren't the only schools people will be applying to.
Well, yeah, and that's the whole thing. What's so crazy about it is that the UCs, come up with, are they calling it the smarter balance test? Is that?
They're not going to find, it is impossible. So after we last spoke, I really dug in because I was very curious about what the reasoning was behind eliminating the SAT, or at the very least, going along with the idea that it's discriminatory, because you have Hispanic like me, Hispanic and Black, students in California that score lower than Caucasian and white students. Or Caucasian and Asian American students. Okay, so you have that average difference. And so I really dug into this because I'm kind of like, is there something about this? And the bottom line is, I think it's going to be impossible to find a standardized test that will adjust for the difference in, shall we say, well, I'm not going to say what the difference is. Yeah.
Culture?
God, man, it's so rough to say that because people get so weird about it. But yes, like, look, you go to Doherty Valley, and that's a community that's predominantly Asian American.
Yes,
It's like
yes.
90% Indian and
It is
Asian.
a pressure cooker high school too.
And they are, and I am not taking anything away from the kids. This is one of the big problems that I see. People say, "Oh, well, that kid's Asian, so of course he scored well." That's a terrible thing to say, right? Very stereotype, and more than anything, it just takes away from that kid, because that kid's like, "Look, I killed myself to get these scores." They're like, "Well, of course you did. You're Asian." You're like, "No, no, no, no. I killed myself. Like, the fact that I'm Asian didn't help me stay up at 2 a.m. to study." Right? Like, I made myself do that.
I'm not genetically, like,
right.
made to do that.
It drives, and it just robs them of their effort. So that drives me nuts. But the point is, yeah, I think there are ultimately, I'll speak for the Hispanic, because again, I'm Mexican. I don't see the same drive towards, or ability for the Hispanic community the same way I see the drive for Asian American community.
I think it's less cultural as much as it is communities that are underserved. And that doesn't have anything to do with being Hispanic or Black. I mean, you could be a white kid in one of those communities. I know the percentages are incredibly low compared to other nationalities, but the thing is that these students are just not being taught at the level that, say, a San Ramon Valley or an Akalani school district are.
Okay, couple things. My sister got a master's in education from Pepperdine, and I was speaking to her about this because, again, I really dug in, because I was thinking, look, are you participating in some like goofy system here that's just you're not going to be happy about when you get the facts? So, one, if you go to the most underserved areas, say you go to schools in Compton, or even Ignacio Valley actually ranks very poorly on
Mount Diablo High School. And I have worked with students at Mount Diablo High School, my pro bono students. Yeah.
Yes. So there you go. You have analogous levels of access to education in these schools, right? For say Hispanic and Asian American students. Asian American students will still outperform even when starting at the exact same elementary schools. And this ties into one of the things that my sister, again, getting a master's down in the LA area at Pepperdine in education, they were discussing the prevalence of Asian American majority in higher education, but minority in lower education. So like in high school, you don't have the majority of people in this area that are Asian American. But if you go to like UC Berkeley, you get tons of Asian Americans. It's like double the population percentage-wise, right? So why was that? And the facts bared out that there are cultural disparities, that if you drop, say, like an Asian American immigrant into a certain community, within 1 or 2 generations, they will be educated and living at a greater lifestyle than the average person surrounding them. I think there are cultural differences here that I did not make up.
Regardless of the
education
services that are at the high school.
That's right. If you take the average Asian American family competing with the average Hispanic American family, like my family, you're going to see disparities in performance, and that's just the way it goes. Now, you play that out on a standardized test, you can't really say that. Like, the defense for the UCs using the SAT can't be, well, Asian Americans study really, really hard, right? And they're like, what are you saying? Hispanic Americans don't study hard? It's like, no, we're just saying, like, we're giving a math test. I don't understand exactly what you think. Like, I'm just giving you a math test to see if you can do the math. You can't tell me I'm discriminating against you just because you score lower on the math test. So my point is, because they can't say that, because they can't say what I think a lot of people intuitively understand, because they can't say that, you're never going to make a test like the smarter whatever test the UCs are coming with. You'll never find a test that will eliminate that disparity, because culturally, I just think there's too much of a push.
Well, I think just in terms of the business aspect of this, monster of standardized testing, is that if either the SAT or the ACT approached the UCs, because come on, the UCs, yes, they are just California, but at the same time, Berkeley and UCLA, once they make a decision, a lot of the other public Ivies fall in line. Michigan, Virginia. I mean, I wouldn't call University of Washington a public Ivy, but it's pretty up there. And so the smartest thing to do would be to work with an established standardized test and to go, look, if you made these 27 changes that we as UC Regents and whatever else have decided, we're going to keep going on with your test. I mean, they should not recreate the wheel, because it is never, like you said, it's never going to roll properly. It's always going to be lumpy and awkward, and there might be a section on there that leans, I mean, you have to talk to us professionals on how do you best get, I guess,
quality of opportunity.
Yeah, and it's just a quality of opportunity. But if you were to design a test for kids that are in LAUSD, I used to work in 22 of the most underserved high schools that were, because at the time there were 60. They've split them up a little bit since the late 90s, way back when I worked at UC Berkeley. And when we worked in those schools, there was only 54, 56 schools that were actually UC eligible. And we identified 22 of the most underserved schools, which, the biggest benchmark was 95% of the students were on the free and reduced lunch program. Of course, 90-something% might be African American or Latino. It just depended on the pocket of LA that they were in. And we said, okay, well, what if we identified the most high achieving sophomores, middle of their sophomore year? And we'd reach out to the counselors and maybe if there's any honors or AP classes, teachers, and find out who are those kids. Well, it was really challenging because they also have the track system, which is a year-round school, and they've had that since I think the late 80s, just to be able to accommodate the population that went to those schools. And so if you got on the wrong track, you're screwed.
Wait, explain the track system to me.
So it's year-round. I mean, Brentwood has it now. Brentwood School District. They get 2 weeks on, and then like 2 months on, and then 2 weeks off again. So you're going to school year-round. If you're on that track, the same school will have a traditional schedule, just like we're used to here, where you go to school in August and you're out in early June. And if the program that I worked with, it doesn't exist anymore because it was very expensive to run. It was called the Pre-Collegiate Academy PCA, which was with the Incentive Awards program, which that scholarship still exists, but not with the services that we used to provide. So we would identify, we would probably have like 20 different applications, and I'll tell you, it was like pulling teeth to find these high achievers. And when we said high achievers, I mean, yes, they were getting all A's. Yes, they were, maybe taking Algebra 2 as a sophomore, which was like, unheard of in these schools. And it was just really, really challenging to identify students that could operate at a certain level. And between their junior and sophomore year, we would bring them to Berkeley, and this was all covered. And plus, we're dealing with, and we worked with a lot of Latinas because it was girls who were usually doing better. We had to sometimes lean hard to get a boy in our program. Right. I mean, we were lucky if we got 1 or 2 out of 22 high schools, because we'd choose 1. We'd choose 5. 5 would be up for it, but only 1 would get all the real big benefits. But we had our whole spin on like, well, they're an ambassador and they're going to like show everyone else how you can do it. And we're like, okay, whatever. But we would bring them up to teach them how to write and take pre-calc. Because even though they took pre-calc at Compton High School or Balboa High School, it was not pre-calc.
Right.
It was not the pre-calc these kids take in this area.
Right.
And so we had to come, we usually got graduate students or something, put them up at Foothill. It was it was like a 6-week, I called it a 6-week academic boot camp.
Right.
And
Super
they were
intensive.
Exhausted. They had never worked like this before.
I worked with a student pro bono several years back who was going to Richmond High School, and he was a valedictorian of his class. He was junior, had like a 4.6, right, crushing, taking every class at Richmond High School. Mm-hmm. He couldn't get above a 23 on the ACT, and he would do his homework. I'm like, okay, do these 60 math questions, because a math section is 60. I'm like, do this in math section and English section. Time yourself, because we need to make sure everything's fine. He'd come back and say, I couldn't get past number 30. I was like, whoa, bro. You're in calculus. You need to be getting all the way done with these, no questions asked. And he was like, yeah, I couldn't move fast enough. Like, it goes easier to harder.
So
The
what,
first
so
30.
what, so what is it?
What's
your
okay? So my take,
analysis of it?
look, it is not. Doherty Valley is a pressure cooker, right? So you could be in calculus AB, you could be in calculus BC. You have people ready to just crush you, right? If you stumble at all. How many people do you think are in calculus AB in Richmond High?
So he's not getting pushed by his peers. He's not feeling, thriving under pressure kind of atmosphere.
I do not think he was getting pushed as hard as students in this district.
That's
just it.
interesting, yeah.
You have people that are applying for certain classes here. You don't have enough of the seats in, say, like a Calc AB. How many people do you think got turned away for Calc AB there? Like, you just don't have you don't have the same kind of pressure. And I'm not taking anything away from him, but this is in response to what you were saying about, Michigan might follow and all of these other schools may follow the UC's lead. I actually firmly disagree with you on this. Okay. And I'll tell you why. And we're going to find out what's going to happen. Uh-huh. Like, let me be clear. And I don't have an inside track to this. It's not like I know anyone. Here's the thing. In the beginning of 2020, before COVID locked everyone down, the UCs, end of 2019, there was a lawsuit saying the SATs are discriminatory. Mm-hmm. Okay? 2020, the beginning in February, the UCs had funded a study to figure out, okay, are we using a test that these people don't like, but does it have value? Okay, is there value in this test? Is there predictive value? Mm-hmm. And what they found out is the SAT and ACT are the number one predictor, the number one quantitative predictor for first-year success. Mm-hmm. So if you have two students that have 4.6s or whatever, it's like, okay, well, they'll probably be successful. You can't predict the same way as if you have like a 1,500 or a 1,400. Mm-hmm. So the UCs have now been hamstrung. They can't use the number one predictor of success. So in this way, they're fighting blind a little bit. Mm-hmm. So now they do have GPAs. A lot of good those are going to do us, though, considering San Francisco, the school district one of them gave everybody A's for one of the semesters. So what are the GPAs going to tell us? We don't know for sure, right? There could be massive inflation. There could be people that talk about underserved, somebody whose Wi-Fi went out on a test. I mean, you're going to have horrible things. Right. What would bring it all back together? A standardized test. So Michigan knows Cal cannot be discriminatory with the number one predictor. You think Michigan's going to give up that tool?
No, I don't think. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if the UCs didn't try to recreate their wheel with the smarter balance tests that they're throwing around, is that they actually reached out to either the SAT or the ACT and said, if you made these changes, it would be less offensive, discriminating towards different populations.
Yes.
I think other public Ivy schools would follow that. I'm not saying that they're going to follow dropping going test blind. I do not think that they would do that.
100%, because that's what I'm saying. I think there will be a lot of schools that actually double down on the SAT now because they know I have this little bit of information that makes a difference and you don't have it. So the UCs will be accepting people based on, say, a GPA. And that is that's a lesser prediction compared to what other people have. And in that way, look, I agree with you. It would be smarter for the UC to just reach out and say, hey, look, you guys do tests, tests. These are our main objections. Can you work with us and pick off some of these and we can get back to it.
It's just common sense, which I think we've lost tremendously in the last year or so. But I mean, there's a couple of things. One is I always remember a conversation that I had with one of the admission directors at Colorado School of the Mines, right? I mean, it's a total STEM school. They only have 2 or 3 majors that are not STEM there, hardcore engineering. And it's something like 70% guys and 30% girls. And I'm like, well, because they do this for, small public liberal or small liberal arts schools, is that they'll lean a little bit for boys just to get more boys on campus. And the director's like, we can't lean. It is a STEM school. We need 700s on the math too. Like, that's it. I don't care who you are, where you're from. We just need that or you're going to get crushed. And
It's a
Math
meritocracy.
2, yeah, Math 2 is pre-calc, and pre-calc is the greatest, like you said, data point or
Yeah,
factor.
it's a predictive factor.
Yeah, predicting factor that you're going to be able to make it through your pre-engineering classes. And that's
Right.
it. Like, they're not trying to discriminate or leave anybody out, but it's just like, you got to be at that level. I don't know what it takes to get at that level, but you need to go get there. So
I think it's so wonderful that you have this conversation where somebody's kind of like, look, we can't fudge the numbers, because at some point we need a level of competence that we can rely on. It's not about your skin color. It's not about who your mom is. If you don't have a 700, then you are not going to make it at this school.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And that's so crazy for people because we've stepped so far away from that. We're like, no, but like you got to have, you know, like you got to fudge for this, you got to do that.
You're not taking in consideration ambition and potential.
I built houses in Mexico. I played Hamlet. They're like, look, 700, that's it. And that's just not the way it is for a lot of schools. And that's a really sad thing, because you have students that you see just do so well and then get passed up.
It's a very narrow situation. So I think students, obviously a student that are not performing at that level on those particular tests, but that doesn't mean a student can't be successful in history as a major, because they can write their way out of a paper bag if they have to, or they can, they have other skills that talking to the professor. I always encourage, I give my seniors a little go make sure you go, back in the day when you could, go talk to every single one of your professors.
Oh, yeah.
Always go to the office hours, 2 office hours before every midterm, because you wouldn't believe how loose-lipped they are about what's going to be on the midterm. When you go up and go, I don't really understand this, they're like, oh yeah, you don't need to know that. And then they tell you what you need to know. You're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't spend 3 hours trying to study this, because clearly the professor could care less about telling me about it. So
it's just that human connection gets you so much.
Yeah, so much. But those skills, those soft skills, can get a student through a UC if they don't have to be able to read graphs and perform complicated equations and stuff like that. So I'm not saying that should be a hard and fast rule for everything to score at a certain number in order to be successful and I will say a UC, because a UC is very hard to get into. So it's not a blanket statement. It's just there are pieces where it's like you need to find a redeeming factor of why you think the student is going to be able to make it through the first year at the school.
There we go. That's if I sounded like I was saying everybody needs to get a 700, that's not what I was trying to say. What I was trying to say is exactly what you just said, that we need to have some very clear factor that says this person is capable. Like you're saying, look, if somebody's applying for history and they can write like a monster and they love history, then you need to have some way of figuring that out and then say, look, I admitted the student because they're very good at writing. They obviously have a passion for history. This makes sense, right? But I feel like there's a lot of talk about almost just, I shouldn't have to justify why I admitted the student. Right. The student's in because the student deserves to be there.
That goes back to their whole spin on a holistic review.
Right.
And
that's a problem to me.
Well, a holistic review is code for we don't have to tell you why we're not letting you in. No? I
agree 100%.
And I always thought that test optional was code for don't send us your cruddy test scores, because we want you, but we don't want to have to put it into our average of who we admit.
Right. So test optional. The president of Rice University, Reed University, wrote this tremendous article. I think it was about 2010, because there was starting to be this push towards test optional. But what was actually going on is U.S. news reports was really gaining in popularity with quantifying, okay, these are the averages for admissions and boom, boom, boom.
A lot of parents bring those to me.
Right. And back in, 2000 or 1990, that was not the same kind of, and we didn't have, the web in 90 and like it was
Right.
just barely there in 2000. But 2010, everybody had a copy of this thing and people were checking it. I remember when I was applying to law schools, I was checking these things all the time to find out what the rankings were, what the average LSAT scores were. And so my point is the president writes this tremendous article saying, who are you kidding? Everybody knows when you go test optional, your average SAT score goes through the roof because the people with low SATs do not submit them. The people with great SATs that think it will help submit them. Yeah. So now you can say your admitted class has this average SAT score. And his point was great, which, look, what do you think happens with GPAs? Do you think all GPAs are created equally? No, that's absurd. What do you think happens with extracurriculars? I mean, like, how do you think we get to this point? The essays can be written by parents. Interviews are subjective to the interviewer, whether the people click or not.
And it's usually an alum.
Right.
And they want their kid from their neighborhood to get in.
Right, because they're not interviewing somebody from Philadelphia if they live in Berkeley. They're interviewing the Berkeley kid, right? So you have all of these problems. And again, the president wrote, look, the SAT and ACTs, these may be imperfect, but they do offer us a no-fib, clear picture. Yes, limited, imperfect, but on this day, this kid could do these things. And you could take it again, fine. So on 2 days, you could do these things. But we know for sure that was that kid, and that was the ability on those days. Right. I found it beautiful. Like, why is this so controversial? This should be so painfully clear.
Well, and I know this at UC Berkeley, and I know it exists at the other UCs, is that there are safety nets for kids that come from really disadvantaged high schools and if they're able to articulate in their essays different challenges that they've had to transcend through in order to be academically successful, they get tagged. They get.
Is that you?
That's sorry. I should.
Oh my gosh, you have an actual ringer.
Yeah, I like old school.
Look at you.
And so I actually have a phone that looks like the kind you would dial, but you pick it up and it has the digits on it.
Look at you.
And I have a lot of people say something about that phone in my house.
Yeah, you're very bougie. That's very bougie. Is
it very bougie? I don't think so. It's kind of old school. And I do have a real landline too.
Do you have the Magic Jack or do you have an actual landline?
I have an actual landline, but
holy cow.
So
is it, I presume, for emergency services or something?
Deviating from all of this. Well, some of it had to do with I have Verizon, and it's like I have this pocket in the world on my street where I don't have the best reception. That's number one.
Did you know you can do Wi-Fi calling with Verizon? So there's a thing where you literally can turn on Wi-Fi calling on your phone.
But my kids, like, they're gamers. They're just sucking it up anyways. Like, what am I doing? But here's the other reason that doesn't really exist anymore. But I was in both the 89 and the 94 earthquakes in California. And in 94, I was in LA, of course, for the Northridge earthquake. And it happened in the middle of the night. And all the power went off. And, of course, they were saying, like, don't use the water and stuff like that. But our landline worked for a little bit a time, and I was able to call out of LA into my family in the Bay Area to let them know that, like, our building hadn't collapsed, even though literally buildings on Santa Monica Boulevard blocks away from me were collapsing. So the fact that I was able to, like, make a call was, of course, this is all pre-cell phone, but cell phones probably wasn't working either. So I always have that, like, ingrained emergency. But now
we have a landline too for that reason. Emergency services just in case.
Here's the problem with all of that. And of course, my father will only call me on my landline because he hates the cell phone. But anyways, the thing is, though, now we have a system because we have a booster and we have a Wi-Fi in the back house and the main house, and we have our phone and the cable and all of the stuff, right? And we even had to have them bring another line in because we have 4 TVs on property. I think 4. And so, but if the power goes off, now our landline won't work. Because it's not, too tiny. Even though, like, I even have a phone that you don't plug in. It's like the old school phone that only a jack goes into the wall. And because of that, though, it would not work now because we're now bougie with our system.
The problem is you've only gone half bougie. You need to get the Tesla Powerwalls like I got.
You're right.
When the power went out in our neighborhood, It was like a week ago when it was really windy.
Yeah.
Power goes out for 4 hours. The only reason I knew is because my neighbor texted me and I looked down at my phone and I had a Tesla notification saying the power wall was on backup. But and we were running off the solar anyway, so I texted my wife and I'm like, hey, kill the dryer. She was like, oh, okay. So we got these power walls. We got them. They actually pay for themselves. It's like a 10 or 15% return per year because you can avoid the high tier electrical rates.
No, it's because, though, that you have solar panels on your roof, too.
That's correct.
And then it's hooked up to the Tesla wall.
Yes.
Okay, because the solar panels will not pay for themselves for 20 years.
That's not
Okay, 15.
I mean, more like 10, but I don't know what panels you got. What do you have?
We don't have panels. We have played around with that idea for a couple of years now.
Man, whoever showed up at your door to sell you panels did a poor job. I could take care of this in 5 minutes. No, like you're in it. You're making like a 10% return pretty fast, and especially considering the ever increasing PG&E costs. I mean, what do you think is going to happen with all these fires and lawsuits that PG&E isn't experiencing? You think they're just going to?
The taxpayers are going to pay for it, or the customers, however
right,
you
both.
want to slice it up.
A combination, right? So PG&E costs are going to skyrocket, right? So even if you just keep your PG&E costs steady for 10 years, PG&E increasing at 8% per year in a decade.
I agree. That's why I run around the house yelling at my kids and turn off the lights. But I feel this is where I didn't see that Progressive commercial that about turning into your parents.
Right.
That one. Yeah.
Right.
So I hear it. I'm like, oh my God, I hear my father right now.
Is he calling on the landline? He's probably on the landline, screaming at you.
He's on the landline.
Yeah.
We never answer the landline either, by the way. We do have a machine hooked up to it, but yeah.
It's all robocalls anyway. Like,
pretty much. No, I for some reason, because I do a little bit answer it, people know to call me on it. And I don't carry my cell phone. It's not like attached to me. I'm someone who'd be like, I don't know where it is.
How do you do that? That's unbelievable.
I love it. I will never get an iPhone watch ever, or Apple Watch, because I just don't need anybody being able to contact me at any time of any moment.
Okay, well, I mean, hat off to you. I don't have an Apple Watch, but and I try to leave my phone, but I know where that little sucker is at all times.
Most of the time, I know. I don't know. My kids take it too. I'm actually really glad I didn't have an iPhone until probably my youngest was like 4 or 5 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
You know how many
I had a phone.
You know how many pictures and videos you lost?
We had cameras that had options on it.
No, we were taking pictures from like the labor recovery room of our kid and texting them to like, what do you mean yuck? He was cleaned off.
No, I didn't want any pictures of myself.
I said of the kid. I didn't say like, but we have these, it was really funny. So Kaiser, if anybody delivers at Kaiser, get ready. So Kaiser had made some deal in between our first kid and our second kid. So we have our second kid and we're very happy and we're in the recovery room and they send in a photographer. They're like, there's this photographer, they're going to come by and do this thing. Now, mind you, we hadn't slept in like 3 days. We're like, what? There's somebody, and because we thought and think it's like somebody coming in for a test or somebody taking our like thumbprint or something. I don't know. We were like, whatever. So it turns out Kaiser made this deal with a third-party photography company. And they come in, they give them access to your room. They tell them and tell you, the new parents, that this person's coming. You think they work for the hospital. They don't. This woman comes in, takes our newborn, who's, a day old. And he's like, oh, let's get him propped up on the pillows here. We're like, why are you, what's going on here? Right? She's taking these pictures. They're terrible. Right? And it turns out that if you buy this packet, they do this little slideshow. She's got the little laptop and they present this little slideshow packet with music in it and everything and try to get you to buy this packet of photos. And we were like, get out of here. You're like, I should have put a no soliciting sign on my door. I was so upset at Kaiser. I wanted to light them up because
there's a letter in you for them.
Oh my, I had it written out. I was like, I'm too tired to send this right now. But it's such a betrayal because it's kind of like people don't just get to wander into the recovery ward, right? And here they're sending this random person in to try to pump you for money. Like they should have sent around a pizza guy. And if he's like, listen, I got a Costco pizza right here. It's $20. I would have been like, done. Like, give me the pizza. Get out of here. Right? That would have been more agreeable. But the point is, we had our cell phones.
Yeah.
So we were taking photos and
Yeah.
little videos of him smiling and, sucking on the pacifier. So we have these beautiful photos. You not having your iPhone until your youngest is 4. You missed out on all
No,
this. I just want you to know.
I had
your
a
daughter
BlackBerry.
suffered.
I had a BlackBerry.
That's a crap photo.
No, I had, no, I'm trying to think. I definitely have something. So my second, who was born in 2004, I have a bunch of images and videos on my laptop from that and from different sources of different types of equipment. But no, definitely my oldest, who was born in 2001, we don't have a lot of but he has some fantastic JCPenney pictures. That's the kid who has the best. I mean, he was like a model. So I must have taken him every 3 months. I have the best pictures of him from JCPenney's.
How much money did you spend on photography for your son?
The youngest? I mean,
the oldest. The oldest, going to JCPenney.
It was so cheap back then. You'd get these
coupons.
It's
a dying industry.
But it was like, you'd get these coupons in the mail and you're like, oh, I'll go again. And I don't know, I'd spend like $50 maybe, and the grandparents were freaking thrilled. And we have some amazing pictures. Kate was like, should have been a model after that. And I'd bring like 3 different outfits and change them really fast. And they'd be like, we don't normally do this. I'm like, come on.
Oh my God. Have you ever heard of Groov Book?
Of what?
Groov Book. Okay, so Groov Book is a service that will send you a monthly photo book that's like perforated, so you can rip out the photos. You get something like 200 photos a month. You upload them off of your phone, and here's the thing: it's like $4 a month. So what we did, my wife and I, we got them set up to be sent to my mom and my grandma and like my dad. So every month they would get a book that had like 200 pictures of the kid, and they would just put them on their coffee table. They'd thumb through them. It was fantastic. And again, they're not checking their emails or their cell phones.
And
my
dad doesn't
even
have an email, or he can't do anything in that lane. So
wow.
I know.
Could you imagine not having an email?
No, he can't even have. I mean, now, and he's got health
fax
issues.
People?
No, he has nothing. He has no computer. He has no Wi-Fi. You go to his house in Albuquerque, New Mexico. There is no Wi-Fi. We go and stay in a hotel to okay, we gotta go. We gotta go get some Wi-Fi.
you bring a hotspot with you. You're like, okay, everybody, here's the password.
We had to. Yeah, it's a different world for sure. Okay, so we really deviated, Matthew.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. Listen to me. Let's come back to the sophomores. Okay, so for a freshman and a sophomore. Let's leave the freshmen out. We don't need to harass them yet. For sophomores, what again? The systemic shift for some schools away from tests, but doubling down, in my opinion, and I think I'm right on this. I think there will be a large swath of people who are like, UCs are done now because they're not going to be able to figure out who the best kids are, but we can, right? So some schools, well, at the very least, some very good schools and schools across the board will stay with the test. Do you agree with me on this?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Well,
so,
I still think we're going to live in a test optional world for a long time.
Oh, okay. Explain this to me. What do you mean? Because again, like 45 states are open and business as usual.
Yes, but there's so many students that I worked with that did not want to go sit in a room with 100 kids. Okay. Because they had a family member or they themselves did not feel safe interacting with people.
Yes, but it's January. Like, they're going to have the vaccines by July.
That's true.
So, you don't want to take the test until July? That's fine. You'll have the August, October, November, December.
Yes, but I mean, think about homeschoolers. They tend to live in the let's not vaccinate world.
Yes, but you're talking about such a tiny portion of people.
I actually did not. I normally never work with homeschoolers because it makes my head hurt. But I accidentally took one because when they called me, it was March of last year, and they're like, oh, they take classes online. I'm like, well, everyone's taking classes online. I didn't understand what they meant by that until I got the transcript. I'm like, what the hell is this?
Right.
So, sorry, my...
No, you're good, you're good.
So, anyways, it was a really interesting situation, and definitely had to, it was a good test for me to reserve judgment for a lot of different reasons, but she would have never.
I hope you had your shots.
She would not. She didn't take the SAT or ACT at all. She's a senior right now. And luckily, she applied to schools that she was going to easily get into. Like Willamette, University of Portland, University of Puget Sound, St.
Sure.
Mary's. I don't think she's heard from, she got into Chapman. But again, here's a situation where it's so fascinating. And this is where GPA rules, right? She has a 4.0.
Mm-hmm.
The school that, I can't even remember what school it was called. They contract with that. I mean, it's a UC A through G accredited online high school that's in the area. And the student, I think, lives in Clayton or something. And she had a 4.0. She did not have a very academic, rigorous schedule, right? I don't even think she took physics. She got one level past Algebra 2. She was taking Spanish 2 as a senior. I did not start working with her until a junior, by the way, but just want to put that out there. But and she was taking, just like criminal justice and sociology and, lovely classes, right? But nothing hardcore, like
right.
nothing
She's
hardcore.
not grinding.
Not grinding. And then on top of it, it's not like she's like spending 20 hours a week doing a sport. No, because one, it wasn't happening. And two, she's on an online school. So anything that she can do is club, or she was doing like community theater stuff. So just not a lot to pull from either. I knew she was a voracious reader, so that helped a lot too. She wrote well, not amazing, just well. Nothing, I mean, she would have been very generic had I not guided her in a direction to really dig a little bit deeper. I mean, they love cliches, right? And they love to be wordy, and they love to write in a timeline so you start falling asleep after the first paragraph. But she got into all these schools. I have a student, De La Salle. You probably know him, but I won't say his name. 3-1, took hard classes. Like, it's De La Salle. They're not, like, totally messing around. I mean, he was definitely in physics and pre-calc as a senior. He got denied from Chapman, and his essays were as good or better than hers. She not only got into Chapman, she got a big chunk of money too, nice merit money, just because she had that 4.0.
Yeah, right.
But that 4.0, I'll tell you, it was not impressive from where that came from. This other student at De La Salle, I mean, he was volunteering. What was his sport? It was either lacrosse or rugby, something gnarly. Like, rugby's gnarly, right? I mean, and lacrosse is like, football with a weapon.
Yeah, right.
So,
I've never heard it put that way. It's true. It's true.
You
it's
have
brutal.
a weapon that you're allowed
right.
to use. And there's no degree when you get a penalty in lacrosse. It's not like this is a level 1 penalty, this is a level 3. Like, you can just take another player out and, like, you get a penalty. But it's like, really? Like, this should have been out of the game, or
lacrosse
like a triple penalty.
Lacrosse is definitely one of those things where it's like a sneaky violent sport. Like, people are like, oh, lacrosse, it's like soccer with a stick. It's like, nah, it's like hockey and football together. And it's
With a weapon.
Yeah, with a weapon.
So anyways, and this student worked. He had a job, like worked at a pizza place and kind of grinded it out a little bit, or Chick-fil-A, I don't remember. But
so athlete, work experience, volunteer experience, rigorous courses.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, he did a whole 2 weeks at Monument Crisis Center over the summer.
So this is my point. This is exactly my point. You got a 3-1,
mm-hmm.
but this kid is a grinder. And
mm-hmm.
you, like, I'll give long odds that kid's going to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Versus a 4.0, totally taking fun classes, no real sport, no work, no volunteer, and he gets in. With test scores, that could potentially be a different kind of thing. And I'm not saying
I think he was like around a 25, 26. So it wasn't,
and she didn't take it.
Yeah, she didn't. I think she might have taken 1 or 2, and she was like a 20. Like a practice one or something.
I didn't work with this kid, did I?
No. Well, no, she would have never.
No. The De La Salle guy.
I think you might have. I'll tell you off recording.
3-1. It doesn't matter. Okay, we'll talk off air.
Okay, the other thing I want to talk. So
wait, where did he get into? Where did he ultimately get into?
Well, his mom's legacy at LMU. So he's pushed to regular. Sorry, I have a lot of students. I think he
It's
got
fine.
into Boise State, University of Oregon. He might have gotten into Colorado State,
And this is a senior right
Washington
now.
State. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Gotcha.
I think the University of Oregon was really high on his list. I think Chapman would have been a really good fit for him. And I think he'll go to LMU if he does get in, because we went early action, so he already knows some of what's going on with the schools. I don't know, I'd have to look back, but yeah, I mean, they were willing to pay any amount of money. There was no financial limitation. So out of state, if Oregon costs 55 or Boulder costs 55 a year.
The reason I ask is because, like, I see one-off rejections where I'm kind of like, odd, but on average, you're going to get into more schools. Like, you have no idea who read his application from Chapman. And comparing, the issue I have is it's kind of like, well, look, he's probably got into at least 5 or 6 schools that are good enough for him.
Well, right, but you have to make sure that college list is solid.
Right. Oh, of course, that's where you come in, making sure he doesn't put all his eggs in one basket. But I hear stories like that because I was a similar student to that. I was a grinder, right? I did not have the 4.2 that my sister had at Ignacio Valley, but I was on 3 sports. I had a paper route. I had volunteer hours. I was in band. I was in calculus. Like, I was in all of these things, and I was grinding it out by myself because I didn't have parental support. So for those kids, I always look at that and say, okay, you may not get the best selection this round in life, but if you keep grinding, you're going to crush the person who had, this easy path.
I mean, I have so many parents in this area that went to Chico State or Sac State. A lot of them were like business or sales. They crushed it. Right. And what's so interesting is because I always meet with the parent and the student first, and then I have student-only meetings, is that the way that they say, they go, well, I just went to Chico. I'm like, okay, get rid of the word just.
Right.
Because I think Chico rules, and those people that come out of that, yes, they tend to be good salespeople. I guess it's the social aspect of it. Sac State has a great business program. It really doesn't matter on that aspect of it, but they do have higher expectations or aspirations, I should say, for their students. So I get that, and they can afford it. So they want to give those opportunities to their kid.
Don't you love seeing Mercedes with like a real nice S-Class with the license plate ring, Chico State?
Yes.
It's the best. It's the best. You're like, good for you, sir. God bless you. God.
Or like a total dumpy car that says USC. No.
Oh my God, you said it. Oh, God bless you.
If I see one, I'll take a picture just for you.
Yeah, like I've seen so much. I've been at this almost 2 decades, and just seeing now the pattern of people playing out, it's like, man, you're gonna get what you get. It was like you may not be the 4.5. I don't know what it is. I always root for the kids that are working really hard.
Okay,
and it's like it's over a decade. Over a decade of you grinding. I know you're 16 now and you're really pissed because you're not going to go to the best school because like that kid didn't study and he's really smart and his parents. But like, keep grinding, kid. And I've seen it over the long haul now because one of my students, he just moved into Danville. He bought a house that's 1.7. Okay, 1.7 million. He did not have a 4.5 GPA. I think he had a 3.6. We beefed his SAT. This was 2005. I was working with this kid.
Yeah.
Beefed his SAT score up 300 points. He goes to Davis. With nothing against Davis, but like, well, we beefed.
He probably barely got into Davis.
Barely got it, but we beefed out. He took the subject tests, and we jacked his score up. So like, we did a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
So he gets into Davis. Doesn't major in anything. He's not like an engineer at Davis or a pre-med or anything. Comes out, has no real path, and just starts getting no hard skills. But he was one of those kids where he was like, I'm gonna just keep going forward, like whatever it was, and not even. He wasn't even a major athlete. He knew he could just keep working forward. He lives in a house that's way more expensive than my house. He's crushing it, And it's all because he kept moving forward. He kept improving. He kept grinding. God bless that kid, man.
Well, here's the thing about that. So
I shouldn't even say he's a kid. He's like 34.
so the trick is to be able to convey, and obviously you can't do that for like Cal Poly or San Diego State, but to convey in that application how that student has transcended through whatever. And it doesn't have to be obstacles. It can just be, I grinded, and this is how I grinded. Just because my zip code is in somewhat of an affluent area doesn't mean that things were just automatically handed to me. I didn't, some of it's luck. Maybe I didn't get the luck.
Right.
But to show the grinding, that's the important part of it. And that's hard to do. And if you're not getting support, again, because you're grinding, they don't always know to write it like that.
Right.
To share that kind of information.
Right.
And can an admissions reader be trained properly to see the paper route, to see the pizza job, to not see it as a cliche when a student writes, well, I was responsible for paying for all my gas and any food I wanted outside of the house, or any extra clothes that wasn't like, a pair of tennis shoes, a pair of nice shoes, and flip-flops. Man,
so how about responsible for paying for the food you want in the house?
Yeah, well,
I would go to Safeway and just buy like the bulk chicken packs and just come home.
Well, but I'm probably more talking about the students that we both work with.
That's true. That's true.
Our parents would not have paid for either one of us to help them. It would have been lucky if we had a pro bono.
My parents didn't pay for my SAT. I paid for the registration and then all the UC apps. My paper route money.
I
God
pretty
bless
much
that paper
paid
route.
all my. I don't remember my parents paying for any application fees or books or anything like that. But so another thing I want to bring up is APs.
Wait. Hang on. Yeah. Okay. Because I hate to steal the conversation because it flows so well. But again, for the sophomores, does this relate to the APs relating to sophomores, or like what essentially you're saying for sophomores, we're going into a more test. You think we're going into a slightly more test optional world. I was saying, well, the vaccine will obviously, many states are open. The vast majority are open. And we're going to have a vaccine for the majority of people that are worried about it likely by midsummer. So from my standpoint, I'm thinking, well, there are a lot of people that are taking the test like normal anyway right now. And there is, let's say, a subset. This is where we went off. You brought up homeschooled people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fine. Homeschooling people, perhaps they will not be getting the vaccine, but the majority of the population will have access to it, and they'll have access to these tests.
But they're still not giving they don't have approval for 16 and under.
Right. But those are the people that are obviously lowest at risk.
Yeah, but I mean, do you then there's no studies, am I going to give it to I have a 16-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to give it to him when he turns 17 in 6 months? I don't know.
Sure. So what?
Probably, but I don't. I mean, I don't think it's going to be available to him in 6 months. I'll be lucky if it's available to me. I think in 6 months.
Right.
But I haven't. And then I've got a little girl, that's really young, 13. What? I mean, obviously that doesn't impact her taking an SAT or ACT.
Right.
But do I give it to? I'm, going to rely a lot probably on my pediatrician. But, I don't know. I haven't really thought that far ahead. I'm really thinking about my parents right now. And the reason why I'm going to even get the vaccine is so I can just go see my parents.
Right.
That to me is the reason for getting it more than anything.
Well, I think the big limiting factor with the test is not as much is this kid vaccinated as much as can we get the school districts and school sites filled with adults that are vaccinated and willing to work with an unvaccinated 16-year-old who's wearing a mask and everything like that. So from my standpoint, by midsummer, I'm thinking that the people that are older or at risk will likely be vaccinated, and school sites should be running with some degree of regularity and certainty. And even here, we saw the San Ramon School District and De La Salle and Carondelet did it. They administered SATs at their school sites. So it's kind of like, look, forget worrying about the the College Board or the ACT to set this up. We're going to make our own test. They took the test, obviously administered them appropriately. But I don't see a reason why that won't become more frequent, right? The school districts doing it themselves,
because only the students that go to that high school have access to something like that.
Right.
Okay, so that's good. But so bigger picture.
Yes.
Is one
for
is,
sophomores, bigger picture.
For that is that one is all of this was accelerated. You were talking, in 2019 there was lawsuits out there for different schools, the UC specifically. So I think we were moving in the direction where test optional was going to be at more colleges. Now this is giving colleges that have tried to push for it permission to do it. That's number one. Number two is that I think that there's going to be more than just homeschoolers, but enough of the population to warrant for all schools to be test optional. Maybe you have to jump through another hoop to just go test optional, because I've seen it on applications, like you click, do you want to go test optional, then suddenly a bunch of other questions pop up in the Common App or something like that. So there may be another hoop that they have to jump through in order to decide to go that direction. A lot of students are like, screw that, I'll just take the test.
Right.
So you see some of that, but I think that it's not going to reset back to what we're used to with all of these schools requiring the SAT or ACT.
I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. I think the people that were leaning towards it or trying to push in that direction, the universities that were trying to push towards test optional, I couldn't agree more. Fast track to, hey, you got the green light. You make no apologies. You're test optional now. But I still think the limiting factor will be with competitive schools, okay, with schools that know. They're like, look, we have limited spots. We have 80,000 people applying. If we admit students that then drop out or are not successful, that is just a horrible waste of resources. So for those
yield will just
those people, for smaller liberal arts schools or like small private schools, like, is USF going to require the SAT? They're probably going to stay test optional. Because who's spending $60,000 and going into the city right now? They're not going to make it harder for you to apply, right? Is University or Seattle University?
They were test optional. USF was test optional.
Right. So this is what I'm saying. Schools like that.
Yeah.
Right. So for smaller private schools, especially expensive private schools that are not like USC is expensive. It's a private. Like, I don't know. I don't understand people's love affair with USC, but I do know it's hard to get in. Okay, for a number of reasons. For those schools, are they going to say, look, are we going to take out the number one predictor to help us figure out who's actually going to do right by the admission spot?
Well, but so let's talk about the tip-top schools, and I wouldn't necessarily put USC in the tip-top schools.
No, but
it's
as far as difficulty with admissions, that's pretty up there.
So. Well, they're taking away the SAT-2s, which was another data point for them to, look, there's a lot of reasons for the SAT-2. One is, how serious is the student about achieving? Are they going to take that extra step and go take a whole nother set of tests after the SAT or ACT? Right. Are they, and what subjects are those? Are they going to perform well? So it was just like how... just that was students that were getting the 4 5s plus grinding. So are they going to do that? So then how are they going to, even just with one test score and a GPA can be difficult to say, like, how difficult is this high school?
Difficult to say the least. I mean, like, that's...
It's
going to be so hard to determine anything from a student because of a GPA now.
So I mean, what are these top Ivy League or hidden? I'll call them hidden Ivies too. Like Tufts and Wash U and University of Chicago. I mean, those are not technically Ivy League schools, but they are insane to get into. I mean, we're talking like, if you don't go ED and you're not legacy, you're looking at a 4% admit rate.
Right. So this is what I'm talking about. Okay. Forget the SAT-2s, and I'll tell you why. Because I used to prep kids for the math level 2, and it's like every year, if I worked with 100 students, it's like 4 asked for help. So it's such a small portion of students that were really diving into taking those tests anyway. Okay, like UC Berkeley eliminated the requirement years back, and then there were a couple colleges within the university that, like, if you were applying to engineering right out of the blocks, you still had to take the math or something like that. But the cost and difficulty and logistics with still administering the subject test, when you have the AP tests, it's kind of like, why do we have both of these secondary tests? And the College Board still owns the APs. So they're like, okay, we have AP and the subject test. Let's just get rid of the subject test, because so many people favor the AP test anyway. You theoretically get college credit. So from my standpoint, the subject test disappearing have no bearing on anything, because is University of Chicago going to be worse off with their incoming class because we lost the subject test, SAT2s? No, they will not. They will be worse off with a 4% admissions rate. They will be worse off if they take shots on students without all of their predictive ability. If you eliminate the number one thing that will tell them who will be successful, they will be worse off, because they will go from having, let's say, 10% of the incoming class struggling and dropping out to having like 20% struggling and dropping
Potentially,
out.
yes.
Potentially. So why would any of those universities do it? The UCs didn't do it because they said it wasn't working. The UCs got rid of the test because they were getting sued.
Yeah, there was so much pressure.
They went to great lengths and spent an enormous amount of time and resources to figure out, look, let's do our due diligence. Let's figure out if this is even working to help us. And they came back, they're like, oh, it's actually the number one thing that helps us.
Right, but now that they're actually going to let it play out.
Yes.
And they should. I think that this is a good test. They should let it play out for a couple years. And then they can say, look, we tried, but now our yield, we've got kids failing because we weren't able to assess them properly. So I think that I think this is a good learning lesson for all of us.
Yes, but it's going to be on the backs of the UC system. Like, this is my criticism.
Yeah, so...
Like, the UC system, we're funding the UC system, being California residents. And we now know it's going to be not as good as it could be.
Matthew, if you even get me started on the fact that my oldest, who took 5 APs and got 4s and 5s and 3 honors and got a 1,500 on the SAT and had a 3.8, didn't get into a single UC, got off the wait list for Santa Cruz and Davis, and did not go engineering or anything. He went, I don't know, global studies. And, I don't even remember, but it was humanities. It was in the College of Letters and Science. And that year was extremely hard. And he, obviously, look, it was not about the admissions people thinking that he wasn't going to be successful at a UC. No chance.
No.
He was not first gen. He really didn't have a big struggle challenge essay to write. And he got a couple C's one semester, and it ruined him, I think. And his 3.8 was from the weighted 3.8 because of all the APs that he took. So I pay a lot of taxes.
Well, good for you.
I guess so.
2020, California is not getting much tax revenue from Matt Todd. I will tell you that right now.
Well, yeah, for 20. But back in 2018 when he was applying, we make too much to get anything and not enough to pay for it.
Isn't that the state of existence? You're the working poor. I heard that term.
I would not call myself poor, but I do clip coupons and have to make sure I buy the cookies on sale at Safeway.
Listen,
groceries are very expensive.
You have a real pool. I have a cowboy pool made out of a cattle stock tank that I was cleaning out today because the rainwater and everything collected in it.
Yeah.
Yes, so it's all nasty in there, and I'm trying to get my 8-foot circular stock tank pool cleaned up and ready for spring. Okay. So yeah, California is not getting tuition money from me this year.
A little bit older than you.
You are, and God bless you for it. I look at you and I'm like, maybe one day I'll be complaining about it too. But listen to me. My point is that yes, I agree. We're moving into an area where you have more test optional schools. We agree on that. Mm-hmm. We can also agree, I think, that there will be some schools, especially that have really intense admissions, that will look at this as an opportunity to snag some of the better students. Because they're like, look, we have this secret insight to these students that UC Berkeley and UCLA do not know. And I think Michigan is going to play that out.
Yeah, we'll see how that I think Michigan and Virginia are schools that you really want to pay attention to. University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill is another school you want to pay close attention to. University of Maryland can give you some interesting results, I think, too. But let's talk about APs for a second.
Yes.
Because look, I don't agree with everything I say.
Okay, you're going to have to unpack that for me. I'm not a...
And the reason why I say that is because you need to preserve your GPA. And if you really, really wanted to take that AP Euro class and that teacher is a ball buster and you will be lucky if you get yourself a B-, I kind of don't want you to take it. And I know you love European history and the History Channel is, something you watch all the time. But I would rather have you take contemporary issues and get an A. Because some schools are unweighted. If we can keep you, if you could truly get a 4.0 and not take that AP Euro class, then that's what I lean towards. I don't agree with that. I think that's lame. I think that if you want to take, there's this amazing teacher, but he barely gives any A's, and he's, so good at teaching the Algebra 2 trig pre-calc so you can go on the calculus, or what's another class that can be weird hard is like AP Psychology, depending on the teacher, can be really hard. But
right,
everyone
those
says
can
that
be
like
crazy. Yeah.
But you learn so much and it's so great, and I don't care if I get a B. And it's just like, yeah, that's great, but when you're talking about no test scores, that GPA is everything.
Yes, this is the flip side of it.
Okay.
Okay.
And so that's why I don't agree with me saying preserve your GPA at all costs, but that's the way of the world.
Right. If we take out the SAT, you're going to have to admit that you're going to sacrifice some portion of your education and interest in education to get the highest possible GPA. That's terrible.
I know. But I'm not going to not play it out for them and explain it to them and go, this is the sitch. Now, look, this is just a recommendation. You can take that Euro class or that psych class, but...
Did you say this is the sitch? You're so street. I can't keep up with you. My brain, I'm like, this is the sitch? Did she say stitch? The hell? Look.
I'll try not to sling it out for you, okay?
I feel like whenever I say eliminating the standardized test is a bad idea, people just look at me and roll their eyes. They're like, of course you say that. And then if you take a little bit of time and understand why, you realize, like, look, there are a lot of consequences to this that are not favorable. Mm-hmm. If you are a parent who wants their kid to actually like learning, or forget that, maybe they don't like learning, but they're going to learn a lot. Maybe they're kicking and screaming, but they're going to get benefit out of it. I feel like most parents are like, yeah, look, I'll take that. We go test optional. It's a whole new game. It's a whole new game of gaming the GPA. The lawsuits are gonna fly, by the way.
And you should not send your kid to Doherty.
No.
Because you need that GPA. You need to go to Nasha Valley High School.
That's not a lie. That's not a lie.
Okay, so APs, I have a new business for you. Ready?
I don't know. I mean,
well, it's just an arm.
I already have one failing business, so I just...
No, you don't.
I'm just kidding.
No, okay.
The apparel's going very well. It's all still free.
Is that what you need to start selling it, not giving it away?
No, that's not gonna. I'm gonna ride this free apparel for all students pretty hard as long as I can. Anyway, I'm sorry. What's your new business idea?
So the APs are going to play such a role. That's what, the College Board, that's what the New York Times article was saying. Okay, fine. Well, not all schools have them. So a fun AP test that isn't a total ball buster is AP World History. So I've been told, right? But a lot of schools they don't have AP World History. They have World History, but not AP version of it. So say a student gets an A. It's like, I did really well. Teacher was all right. I want to take the AP test, but I feel like I need more. Yeah, they can get the book.
Sure. The book is the worst.
It's the worst. It's like, I felt when I need to fall asleep, I get my AP World History book out, and then I can fall asleep in like 3 minutes. And I really could use those college credits. That would be really awesome. But and I'm sure there's a Khan Academy something on there. But again,
Khan Academy is Just, oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Oh my God, listen to me. Listen to me. Hang with me.
It's the worst.
You and I know that if we just ate broccoli and chicken breast our whole life and drank nothing but water, we would be so jacked. We would be like the slimmest, best versions of ourselves. But ain't nobody ever going to do that. Right? Even though we all know, everybody walking down the streets like broccoli, maybe a Brussels sprout, and chicken breast. That's it. That's like Khan Academy. Khan Academy, I avoided doing any kind of online, like YouTube or anything for so long because I'm like, I'm not going to. Khan Academy is perfect. They do every math problem perfectly. They explain it perfectly. I cannot come up with a new way of algebra. But I've realized recently it's so distasteful. It's so hard to watch those videos, even though they're perfect.
And that chicken is overcooked.
Oh, it's rubber. It's just shoe leather.
So when I have a student go, yeah, I'm gonna, my high school, we're set up to do Khan Academy, and I just go, oh no, not. Yeah. That's your test prep option, Khan Academy.
No. It's not going to be. I got a project coming out. We'll talk off the air.
Okay. So, anyways, I would love to be able to point the student in a direction where they can either go to a class or have a few sessions with a tutor to be like, this is how you approach AP World History exam, because they didn't get to take the AP actual class. And I think another one would be bio. Everyone takes bio their freshman year, and if you do well in bio, and I think, I'm probably stereotyping students a little bit, but you're solid in math, it kind of helps in that lane. And you take E, biology E, AP, awesome, right? And you can take that exam too and get those credits. You're not taking you're preserving the GPA, but you're taking the AP version of it to show, because you do not, and I looked it up, you do not have to take the AP class in order to take the AP test.
Okay.
What do you think about that? What do you think about that?
So what you're saying is essentially take a student who gets all the benefit of taking regular bio, regular, let's say, physics, or regular world history.
I don't know about physics.
Okay, forget physics. Regular bio, regular world history, right? Because they don't have an
and
AP.
Regular psychology too.
And regular
I hear.
psychology. And then have a program that turbocharges them, gives them the last mile of the marathon so they can go on to take the AP test, get AP credit, get the test score, help the admissions, but preserve the GPA. You're kind of an evil genius. This may be better than my free apparel store I have here. That is a tremendous idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, because this is what we're doing now. We're gonna game the system.
Yeah, I do that in other ways too, but yes.
Yeah, I know. Whenever somebody's like, "Listen, I need the wizard at gaming admissions," I'm like, "Call Michelle Myers."
Oh God. I almost was a travel agent. I also do that in that lane too.
A travel agent.
Yes, it was either between. I really wasn't going to be, but I'm saying that my skill set translates into travel.
Before COVID, weren't you traveling like to 4 or 5 different, doing 4 or 5 different trips a year anyway to go to colleges?
Oh yeah, I've seen 250 colleges across the U.S. and they fly me there. I got on that little roller coaster.
Look at you.
I know. It was literally days before a little teeny tiny school called Marysville University. That's in St. Louis, Missouri. They were flying me out, and you just nice to the person that's the coordinator. I was the coordinator way back at UC Berkeley for some of this stuff, so I know. And nice to them. And I'm like, I'm going to LA first, see my friends, and fly me out. Like, can you fly me to LA and then fly me from LA to St. Louis? And then fly me back to Oakland.
Just give me a day layover or something.
And the lady's like, just can you book it and send me the receipt and we'll reimburse you. I'm like, okay.
See?
But
you game pretty much every system you come into contact with. I can figure this. The phone system, the flight system.
No, but I was going to see Marysville, of course, WashU, University of St. Louis, and Webster University. So those 4 colleges I was supposed to see in March of 2020. And, of course, that got pulled. And that was my last tour. Although I did tour around Monterey Bay State back in, I think, October or November. Oh. And I'm going to go with, unless I guess the marine biology's good there, or you can play a sport there. think
Yeah, they have golf. They have a
And
couple.
they have water polo.
Yeah, they have a couple very specific sports.
They have a couple sports. I'm going to say go to Santa Barbara City College. Just saying. Just saying. I will most likely never put that college on someone's college list now. I have a little bit in the past. It's not happening any longer.
I worked with the student. The only student I've ever worked with that wanted to go to Monterey Bay was a golfer, and she was. My heart broke for this girl. She had a 12 on the ACT, and to start, and they needed to get her up to a 19, and we got her up to like a 17, 18, and it was a Herculean effort. And it was clear that this girl she was not dumb, but she had
learning challenges.
She had learned some learning challenges, and she had just missed. She was self-accommodating. So you knew that there was some third grade version of this girl that didn't understand the math, but she figured out how to essentially like parrot the information. And so she didn't retain anything. She didn't really understand the steps involved, but she could reproduce like a 7-step problem. She had no capacity to manipulate it at all. She was just like, I do this, this, and this, right? I was like, yeah, but what if we change it a little bit? She was like, I don't know. I have no. Yeah. And it killed me because when we got her scores back, I mean, and she had gone from like a 12 to a 17, 18.
So she learned a ton.
We jacked the score up, but it was just shy of being able to play golf her first year. So she was still able to go. She just had to redshirt her first year. But she was really upset that night. But I mean, you can't save them all. I mean, we pushed so hard.
You can't save them.
You can't, and it's not like it didn't work. Like we jacked her score up a ton, but we just came short of that mark. But yeah, that's the only one I know.
I'm not a big fan of that school.
Yeah, no.
But yes, I have seen schools. Okay, so back to my AP ideas.
Yes. Back to him. Look, I'm done. I'll do it tonight. I have the program already working on my head.
That would be something. But again, this is not for every student. And so my question is that I think the College Board, because of that, basically they're cutting their losses with the subject test, right? Maybe 10% of the students that were taking the SAT or ACT were actually pursuing the subject tests. They were down to like 10% that were requiring the essay portion of it. So they're cutting their losses and they're going to lean hard into the APs. That's what the word is. So they need to offer it more than just in May.
Yes.
Because I have students that take, this is a very accomplished student. She's a grinder. I wouldn't say that she's just has that natural smart ability like we can see in some students, but that girl can produce. She took the AP Psych class in BYU online. She goes, it was totally easy, got it done in 2 months, the whole year in 2 months. But she couldn't take the AP test because she wasn't done till July. So they need
I was going to say May and then July, so you can avoid finals. People can brush up in June and then take it in July.
They should have at least 2 or 3 opportunities to take the AP exams. Right. I mean, I've had students that are incredibly accomplished, and they're like that one day in their whole lives to take their AP Chem class or test, they got a 2 because they had the stomach flu or, something like that. And, my experience is that, and parents love to like go way down the rabbit hole with details of what happened to Billy, and this is why he didn't do well on X, Y, and Z, and they want to write about it, is that you can never write your way out of
a 2.
A 2,
you can never write your way out of a test score,
or a bad grade,
right.
or not taking a certain class when it's like blinking on your transcript that, well, what happened here. Right. You just can't. The UCs are like, yeah, well, that's nice, but, we only have like 5,000 other students that have it and you don't.
Right.
And you're not first gen.
Oh, my God.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And you're not first gen. I'll just start with that. I have a student from, a parent just called from Head Royce, and I think it's a freshman or sophomore, something like that. Neither of the parents went to college. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, your son is first gen. She's like, yeah, we don't really know the process. I'm like, God, I so want to work with you.
Like, listen to me. I'll come to you right now. Do you like coffee? I'll bring you a coffee.
So yeah.
People look, I really want to stress, you and I know how this plays out. And I think there are some people that are like, is it really that big of a deal? just from my experience with this as well, I had a student, Head Royce, actually, and both her parents were from Ethiopia. They immigrated here when they were 18, 19, had her, I think, the next year. And she had a 3.6 from Head Royce and like a 12.50 on the SAT, and she went to UCLA. She did not have a sport. She graduated. Okay, like it's not like she went and she flunked out. She got hooked up with tutors right away. They really pushed hard. And I'm not taking anything away from this girl either, right? We started out kind of talking about that. Like, I don't want to I love this student. I love this family. This mom still checks in with me to this day. Like, they're great. But there is something about the admissions that it's kind of like, look, Rahel, her daughter's name was Rahel. I doubt anybody listening knows Rahel. But it was like, there's no way Rahel would have gotten into UCLA if, part of her essay wasn't about, hey, I'm Ethiopian.
My parents escaped a war.
Right.
Probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And she was an awesome kid. She was president of her class, but it was not an academic dynamo. And again, did graduate and fantastic and best personality ever. I love Rahel. But yeah, like that's a thing. If you have that story, that holds weight.
The UCs just came out with the numbers, and UCLA was around 30% first gen admits. Actually, Berkeley was kind of low. They were in the high 20% for first gen admit. And then I looked at Santa Barbara, because those were kind of like everyone loves Santa Barbara, right? I didn't look at Riverside or Merced. Santa Cruz was pretty high too on first gen. They were 30-something%. But yeah, overall, because you have to factor in Riverside and Merced, because I think they're really high. The year before last, because we're always a year behind, of course, with stats, it was 42% of the students that were admitted into the UC system was first gen. 42%. Yeah. And then 60-something% is on some type of financial aid, and it's like, well, who's paying?
You are.
Not enough. I'm not paying enough. Right. People, that are contributing a lot to taxes.
California made more. Like, they have a budget surplus this year or something ridiculous. Like, we increased our tax receipts this year. Like, and there, it's in the law. California Constitution, I think it's 54% of every dollar has to go to education.
Okay.
I mean, like, who thought making UC Merced was a great idea? Who? Like, point to the person.
Because they were going to serve the Central Valley students, and eventually UC Merced was going to be built out into the city of Merced.
Listen to me.
They own all that land. They're a D1 school without a sport.
Listen to me. This is what I'm saying. There's money falling from the heavens for the school system. It's being mismanaged.
Oh, for sure.
And misappropriated.
Okay. So I have another idea for that. Haas, one of the greatest business schools in the country. Yes? No?
Yes.
Why don't they get their think tank going? Use our, they're free, right? Those people are free, essentially. Because they're going to their graduate. They're doing their MBA there.
Okay.
They should be assigned, all of them, maybe like even year after year. Every group should be assigned how to manage the budget for the UC system.
Do you actually think that any administrator in the education system wants to think of something as lowbrow and dirty as engaging a business person to help them?
I don't think they have a choice anymore.
Sure they do. Just cry poor.
No, I think that there has to be somewhere where someone says, we need to run this like a business.
Okay. Sure, but like we can all say there's going to be that point, but that's like saying the deficit is now like $22 trillion.
There's so many lines that we draw. It's like colleges, even the private ones, can't cost more than $60,000 a year. University of Chicago is slated to cost $100,000 all in 2025.
This is what I'm saying. We know there's theoretically a line.
There's no ceiling.
It's the greater fool theory. It's like there's somebody that's going to pay it. And the more competitive it is to get in, the more you can charge. That is basic economics,
Well,
right?
when you talk about test scores, a test score actually, I mean, there's studies done. Higher the test scores for admitted students are higher alumni donations.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, no,
So
they
there we
call
go.
it the funnel.
So
They call it the funnel.
let's tie this back to the UCs. Higher test score, higher donations after graduation. Guess what the UC is going to get less of now? Because they can't figure out who has the higher test scores.
Yeah, I didn't
so they
even-
can't
Well,
they
the
can't identify
bureaucracy-
who's going to be
Yeah.
who's going to be donating more afterwards. Like all of these things come back at some point. You have to get to reality where it's kind of like it's not as holistic as you want if you want the best.
I just hope that if they go in this direction, that there will be actually the student section will be filled at Cal football games.
You have a bleeding heart for this, and I so appreciate that about you.
That's my only hope, because I'm thinking they're only letting in students that are like grinding so hard that they don't have a social life. I mean, in the early 90s, the student section was packed, okay, at Cal football games, packed, and they always sucked. Cal has always sucked. I'm sorry. They
Okay,
have.
but how about this?
But people would go, and now you look as an alumni as season ticket holders, and you look across the stadium to the student section. It is a very sad situation.
Listen to me. First off, sitting in that sun on that Saturday afternoon is very hard.
Not if you have the appropriate amount of beer.
Listen to me. I rushed the field after we beat USC in 2002. Three?
Yes.
I was a senior. Okay, listen to me. I rushed the field that year.
I was there.
Okay, I was there.
Triple overtime.
The goalposts, the whole thing. I was on the field for that. I was terrified that the bolts were going to come out and hit us in the eyes. But my point is that we have in our memory a time when Cal did cool things, and we're reminded of that at the beginning of every single season when everybody says like, this is the year, and Cal will go like 3-0 or something like, this is the year, and then then they'll lose like the next 6 games in a row. And it's like,
next year,
and then it's always next year. When they bought out the last coach, they had to pay him something like $5 or $6 million to leave because they had to honor the rest of his contract, get him out, pay more money for another dude who's done an equally poor job.
But that gets paid for. I mean, the alumni pay for that. But my point is that if you get students that have community and that are vested into the school, that leads to donations, and it's not just being a barebacker or something like that for football. They tend to give a little money to the major that they had, or whatever it is. But to be able to connect students, and it hurts to say this, but USC starts the brains, indoctrination.
Tommy Trojan,
whatever it takes to get them to go. We are a networking machine, and you're part of the family.
Right. We can look up right now. There's a live feed of Tommy Trojan online. There's on the USC website. You can go look up live streaming of a statue on USC.
I've seen it, yes.
Right, like we don't have a live stream of the Campanile clock tower at Berkeley. Like we don't have a live stream of anything. Like there should be a live stream of the Freedom Circle at UC Berkeley.
Or
like
Saber Gate or something like that.
Saber Gate, like give me something. But yes, I agree. The community is not there.
The problem with Berkeley, they would just see some guy peeing on something.
That's exactly why. Because Berkeley has gone damn crazy.
Or some people like sleeping in different areas.
I mean, sleeping would be the best option. I actually don't hang out in Berkeley, believe it or not. Surprise! I'm not a Berkeley chill guy, but I have been there recently, and it is like if I were taking my kids there, I would just be terrified. I mean, it was bad when I was there in the early 2000s, but it has just gone worse. And same with UCLA. I mean, who wants to go to LA right now? Half of LA is homeless. The other half are leaving.
Yeah, definitely there was a decent amount, like in Santa Monica and Venice when I was there in the last year. But, I mean,
Well, it's even worse
I usually
now.
try to stop by UCLA if I have a car, if I'm not flying through LA or something like
Sure.
that. But I go to LA a few times a year, and I'm not one of those NorCals that go, LA sucks. I like
Listen,
LA. I'm not moving down there, but I enjoy going down there, seeing friends.
and
I
then
mean,
leaving.
if
Listen,
I can go to
everybody
the
loves
bookstore,
going to Vegas, but then you love leaving Vegas. You're doing the same thing.
I barely like going to Vegas.
You still like it. My point is, you like leaving more. Nobody likes staying there. That's the same thing with LA. Yeah, sure, I'll go down.
No,
I love a
like
beach.
LA. I could go stay in LA for a week next week if the restaurants were open outside. I
could stay in Vegas for a week. I
I
ain't putting
couldn't.
roots down.
It is a 2-night max. It is a 2-night max.
You gotta catch a show or something.
Okay, look, I could fly into Paris every single time I go to Europe. How's that?
That's fancy. Listen to me. UNR. Okay, can we talk about WUI real fast for people who are unfamiliar with this? So
Yes.
there is a system by which.
Western Undergraduate Exchange Program.
Thank you. Repeat that one more time.
Western Undergraduate Exchange Program.
God bless you.
WUI.
Now, what does this entail for people who don't understand?
Okay, so there's like 100, I'm making this number up, but it's something like 134 schools on the WUI, most of which you would never care to go to because they're also, that includes some community colleges.
Mm-hmm.
So there's about a dozen schools that's worth it. Okay, so we'll start on the Northwest area. So Washington State University in Pullman is a WUI school. This will be interesting because here we are with test scores again. They use it as a sliding scale. So your GPA, and this is the highest GPA in your transcript. They don't do like the UC GPA or the unweighted or whatever. It's just the highest GPA. And there's a chart, and you go to the highest GPA, and then your test score, and that's how much money you get per year. It's very straightforward. There's no essay, there's no letter of recommendation. You send your transcript, blah blah blah, and then they award you the WUI.
Now again, just to be clear, because it costs a certain amount of money if you're a California resident to go to a California State University.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The WUI allows you to go to out-of-state universities like Boise, like UNR, like the Washington school you're talking about,
Washington State.
not pay. If you do get the WUI, right, you have to apply for it and go through this process. If you do get it, then you get a discounted tuition based off of, you're not paying the out-of-state tuition. You're getting closer to in-state tuition.
It's based off of out-of-state tuition, and I have seen conferences where they're like, yeah, you're paying 1.5% of in-state tuition. Yeah, not really. That's not how it goes. Everyone uses WUI differently. So Washington State, like I said, uses it as a sliding scale depending on GPA and test scores. I don't know what they're doing. No one knows what's happening with that money if it requires a test score number. Oregon State just jumped on this year.
Bless it.
I know.
Yes.
And Corrales, we have no idea how they're going to use it. And I'll tell you, though, my experience in the past has been that students will get around $4,000-$6,000 off the top, and we're talking about $40,000, $42,000 all in. So your out-of-state all-in price isn't that high. Look, $40,000 is a shitload of money. Okay, right. But it's not Boulder. Boulder's like 52. So if they get you that, they're getting you down, into the mid to high 30s to go to Oregon State. University UC Berkeley is costing $42,000 in-state all in. Okay, so
that's a lot of money.
So everyone uses it differently. The more straightforward one is Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff. Love that school. They don't have a good graduation rate in 4 years. But I talked about it all the time, and I finally went and saw it, and I'm like, oh no, I'm so scared to see this, right? Because I'm like, blah, blah, blah. Northern Arizona. Apply to Northern Arizona. You get the WUI. Great deal today. It's actually a great school. Great part of Flagstaff. I was really like, this is great. You can switch into engineering. Who knew that there was a school out there you could do that with? And if you 2.5 or higher and you get admitted, you have to have some other benchmarks, having certain classes, taking Algebra 2, blah, blah. You get in, you get the WUI. Straight up. Doesn't matter when you apply, there's no deadline to apply. You get the WUI. So that one is super straightforward. I think all in with the WUI is something like $27,000 as a Californian. Boise.
Again, we're going out of state and getting totally reasonable prices.
Oh yeah. Boise State.
I'm in love with Boise, by the way.
So am I.
I have these dreams of moving to Boise.
University of
dreams.
Idaho took me out there. No, I'm sorry, College of Idaho. What is that? It was a private school. It's College of Idaho. I don't remember. Isn't that terrible? And they flew me out.
You're a bad person.
And they put me up. Well, my whole intent was to go to Boise State. I could
There
care
you
less
go.
about that school. Sorry, but it was actually. Yeah, I didn't love it that much. I don't.
You know what you did? You
think
just
I
pulled
put
the
it.
I'm going to accept an invite to senior ball, even though I'm a junior, just because I want to go to senior ball and I don't like this guy.
No, it's
you got
no.
flown out by a
No.
university, but you really wanted to dance with somebody else.
Sure.
You're terrible.
No, for sure. No. That, I'll take it one step worse. I wanted to go to that high school. And it's not even my own high school. It's some high school senior ball because it was going to be at a really great venue, and that's why I accepted the invitation.
Look at you. Look at you.
So,
But
anyways,
Boise, I have a student from Carondelet going to Boise, got the WUI. She was like, it's essentially $1,000 more than if I had gone to, say, Cal Poly or something.
no, it's even less than that. She didn't get the most money. So you have to have a 3.2 GPA, and it cannot be calculated with outside transcripts. So they
Okay.
say. But then I had some other counselor said, yeah, it worked for someone else. So they'll take PE in your GPA. Thank you very much. So it's a 3.2, and it's like $13,000 off the top, which makes it a
Yes.
$28,000. I think it's even less. I mean,
Wait, how much is it to go to
It's like
Cal Poly all in?
30, I pay it.
And so Boise, if you get the full
It's like
WUI,
26.
is cheaper.
Yeah.
So
It's cheaper to go to Boise.
Okay.
And you won't get into, and you're most likely not getting into Cal Poly probably if you're like.
This is the reason I really want to talk about this, because we have seen a grand uncoupling of location and earning power, right? So people are moving away from their jobs, they're zooming in, they're getting the work done,
Yeah.
which allows them to stretch their dollars so much more, right? Because we're like, fantastic, I work in the city and I have this job and I just zoom in now, so I'm moving to Colorado
Yeah.
or whatever because my boss says I can zoom in. And I think
Yeah.
this is going to be, to some degree in the employment world, a forever thing, because there's no way that the companies that are still in existence and making a profit.
Well, I have a whole opinion about
Okay.
that.
Well, let's
but I
table
won't-
that
Yeah,
one, but
that's totally different.
hang on.
I mean,
But
yes,
no,
that's
no.
going to exist, but I think you're losing so much
Yes.
if you do that as a company.
Yes, but forget
okay.
it. That's not. It's
Yeah,
the
that's not point.
concept.
Yes,
that we-
yes.
And
You
so
can
now,
go live in Boise, and Boise is a great place to
no,
live.
I don't want to live in Boise. Stop
you
it.
don't?
You're not listening. You got to hear me out. This is for students. This is my point. Until recently, people have said, hey, my kid should go to a CSU or a UC because I've been paying into the system forever. And if they don't, they're going to go to like Boise and it's going to cost like 50 grand and it's ridiculous. No more. Now that we have WUI, if you are a California resident and you do not get into Cal Poly or wherever, and you want to go to Boise or somewhere in Oregon or Washington or Arizona, you can get the same price education. We're no longer paying through the nose for taxes when we won't get into the schools in California, and then paying through the nose to pay out-of-state tuition in other states. That's why this is so great, because you're no longer tethered to this goofy state or private university system in California that's going to rob you either way.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. But there's not a lot of good WUI schools. I mean, Colorado State and
How
Fort
dare
Collins.
you? I love Boise. Come on.
No,
man.
I love Boise, but like if that's that is the best WUI school on the list for the price, because Oregon State is not just like, they don't have a, if you have a 3.2, you get,
Sure.
$13,000 off. They're not doing it that way. Boise State has the best structure and the best school. I mean, I'd put, it's a toss up of Oregon State to Boise too, by the way.
Right.
Just take the price out. I
Right.
mean, in terms of those
Boise's
schools.
gaining popularity big time.
Oh,
What
big
about UNR? I've had several students go to UNR.
So, the students don't really like the fact that you can just like go, you can see the casinos from the campus. Students that like to ski or snowboard, of course, that's a
They
big
love it.
draw.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I've had students get into some STEM programs that they would have never gotten into practically anywhere else there. So, I mean, that's a good part of it too. But
It's definitely not as popular,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's definitely gaining popularity. Like
I've
Indiana,
only done it.
Indiana's coming out of nowhere, and all of a
I've
sudden,
that's been a school for me for a long time, Indiana. Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you a school that is. I mean, that school. I just love this school so much. It just kills me. Purdue University.
why do you love it so much?
It's $42,000. That's the starting point. Okay, all in, everything out of state. Okay, that's a great starting point. Then if you get anything, I see students get around $4,000 or $5,000. That's less than a UC. It's Purdue. People love the name. It's a great campus. It's not as beautiful as Indiana University. I mean, University, not that it is, but I would say it's a close lookalike to UCLA and University of Washington in Seattle. I mean, they have one of the most beautiful libraries in the country at Indiana. And plus Bloomington's kind of cool, and it's kind of college town. And I'm not going to lie, I did watch the 6th game of the World Series for the Cubs at a bar. It was fun. Look, I was doing my due diligence, okay?
God, the life of a college counselor is so much more entertaining
It's
than
what
the life
you make
of
of
a
it,
tutor.
though, just
No,
like college.
There is no... Okay, well, my college experience was in a rowing boat and in the library. So, again, you beat me again. I was not one of those things where I'm like, oh, it was a blah. But it was like, I'm sitting here grinding through, long division, and you're drinking a beer watching a Cubs game, and you're like, we're both working, I'm leaning into it.
I did
I'm
write
leaning
it off,
into
no.
Oh
Yes, and you have to make sure you travel with the right other college advisor, too. Thank you, Suzanne Cowing. But
There you
yes,
go. There
shout
you
out to
go.
Suzanne.
Damn it, man.
So, and then we actually watched the 7th, which was a win at the University of Illinois in Urbana. So we went there. I met a couple. By the way, you only have to be 18 or older to get in a bar there. Didn't know that. And then there was all these reserved tables that was for the Elks Lodge or something, and they were, with the big TV at the bar, and we're thinking they're not coming, or we'll make friends. So we sat at their table.
Did you see anyone?
No,
with a big
no one
hat?
came. So we just had the best table of the bar.
God, I really want to belong to like the Elks Lodge or the Moose's Tooth group.
So
or
yeah,
something.
we watched. It was pretty fun, to be in Illinois with the Cubs winning.
Okay, so look, we gotta wrap. We've been talking
yeah,
for like
I gotta
2
go.
hours. Yeah,
I
gotta
got
go.
things to do.
My phone is blowing up. Listen to me. We'll just. Is there any really important information? I mean, we've covered a lot of different things, but for sophomores and juniors right now, anything that you really feel like people need to know for sure? I mean, there's a ton they need to know, but anything sticking out?
Like if I was, I don't know. I don't know if I have 3 things right now, but if I'll come up with them as I say them. Number 1 would be choose your classes carefully. Do the research on which teachers teach what, so you have some control over, if it's the crazy AP Chem teacher at your school, might want to sidestep that and not do that. So do a good job choosing your classes so you can yield the best GPA possible. Make sure you have something to do this summer.
Oh God.
And you want to figure this out before spring break. I don't care if it's a job, an internship, a summer enrichment program, volunteering. Even if you can't confirm it, you better know. You better have had an email, a conversation with whoever's coordinating it, and then circling back to confirm it. Not that, I'm going to go try to get a job. I don't want to hear that. Where?
Right.
Where are you going to get a job? Have you talked to them?
Right.
Do you know if there's availability? Do you know what kind
Don't
of
tell me that
position
you're going to
get?
try.
Yeah, I don't want to hear about that. So the third thing would be, this, my essay editor, I go, anytime that you can put in the word adaptable or impact, do it. So, and I told my students that too, and I love it when they take my advice. But I would say, think about how you are adaptable and what kind of impact you can have.
Good advice.
That's all.
Good
That's
advice.
all I got for you, man.
God bless it. Michelle, good to see you as always. Look at this.
I know.
We're making it through the Rona.
We're ruling the world at the same time. So.
God bless it. Well, listen, thank you again for coming. Let's do another one in 6 months, and then you can tell me I was right about the test. That'll be great. Thanks, everybody.